In order for you to understand the perspective of the words I'm about to share with you, I need to share 3 quick facts with all of you. 1, if I am to affiliate with a political party, I affiliate as a Democrat. 2, that I am passionately and fiercely committed to changing gun legislation and making it much harder for people to get guns that would curb much of the gun violence in America. And 3, that I believe every woman has the right to choose to do whatever she chooses with her body and anything that grows within her body. Now, if anyone wants to judge me by those 3 statements, that is their prerogative, but I encourage you to listen closer than everyone else to the words I'm about to share with you. About 2 weeks ago, I had one of the most amazing experiences of my personal and professional life. I was invited to give the opening prayer at Congress. And it was everything that it sounds like. It was full of pomp and circumstance and excitement and fun, and I got to bring my entire family, and it was very special. I was allowed to see where I would speak from while the Congress was in recess for a few moments, and I went to the podium, and the person who was showing me around says, "You should know only 3 people are allowed to speak at this podium. The chaplain, or in your case, a visiting chaplain, a head of any foreign state." So when Prime Minister Netanyahu speaks to Congress, that's where he stands, and the President of the United States when they give the State of the Union. And there I was standing at this podium, and I'm going to give the prayer for the United States Congress. It was awesome, and I was humbled and honored, and the only thing that took the moment and elevated a little higher was that the chaplain of the Congress said, "Your kids, let them come in while you give the prayer. Your family will sit in the galley up above in the gallery, but your kids can come on the House floor." And here I was on the House floor saying the Pledge of Allegiance with my children in the floor of Congress. It was amazing. Now, before the actual prayer happens, a bunch of dignitaries come in and they shake your hand and stand with you, and you in this room with backgrounds and flags, and that was a great experience. Got all types of different people and different pictures. And then the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, came in. And for those of you who've never had the privilege to meet Paul Ryan in person, he is a tall man, incredibly handsome, bright blue eyes, a charismatic smile, looks you right in the eye, talks to you. He knew exactly who I was. He knew a little bit about my background, and he couldn't have been more charming. And then he reaches down to my son, who's 10 years old, and he says, "What is your name?" He says, "My name is Elias." He goes, "Elias, it's good to meet you." And Elias knew, because I had told him, that Paul Ryan was from Wisconsin, and Elias says, "Speaker Ryan, I'm very sorry that Aaron Rodgers is hurt and out for the season," referring to the Green Bay Packers. Well, this lit up Paul Ryan. He smiled from ear to ear. He goes, "You had to bring that up. I was so excited to have you here, and now you got me all sad again." And he starts talking football with my son for a whole 5 minutes. Now, that might not seem like a lot of time for you, but the Speaker of the House is a pretty busy person. He's talking football with my son for 5 minutes. He couldn't have been more charming to my daughter also. And then he said to me 3 times, he goes, it's Closter?" I said, "No, it's Closter." He goes, "Closter, Closter." And he practiced it over and over and over. And then he came in to introduce me for the prayer. He gavels down and he says the visiting chaplain is Rabbi Kirshner from Closter, New Jersey. And he goes like this and puts his head down. I say the prayer, and then I adjourn to sit in the house seats next to my kids. And then they say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then he walks down from the speaker podium, comes over to me, goes, "I can't believe that my Wisconsin got the best of me," and I said Closter. "I know it's Closter, I practice Closter." He goes, "I'm so embarrassed, but great prayer, nice to meet you," shook the kid's hand, and then he went back to his busy schedule. And he could not have been a nicer, more charming, and sweet person. So these things in life apparently don't really happen unless you put it on social media. It's just a figment of our imagination unless you can share it with everybody else, right? So the next day, I put on social media that I had this awesome experience. It really was an awesome experience. And a couple of the pictures that were there, I happened to not put the one of the speaker with us because it hadn't come back yet. We're not allowed to bring our cell phones there, and it was professionally taken, and we hadn't gotten those yet. But a few of the other ones we had, we put up, and I shared about the experience. And I said how wonderful it was, how nice it was, and how kind a man the Speaker of the House was, how charming he was, and how engaging I found him to be. That was the whole statement. And some people who now, your social orbit's no longer your social orbit. It's not your home, it's not your family, it's not your dinner table, it's not your Shabbos table even. It is your social media orbit. And all of the people that you enlist on it come and speak to you at these times. So someone who I respect very much, who said this in the most kind way, said, "Rabbi, you are a leader and people will follow you. And I think you need to put that post about the Speaker of the House and take it down. Because how dare you say he was a good man or a charming man or a nice man?" And by the way, that person who I respect very much, who said it in such a nice way, was followed by dozens of others who had horrible things to comment about the Speaker of the House. So I found myself so overcome with frustration that I couldn't quite speak. I couldn't even quite respond, and of course I did not take it down. But I was so bothered that someone would take a comment that was apolitical. It was just 100% about this man's charm and kindness and niceness to my young 10-year-old child, about the kindness and respect and deference he offered me at this moment, and that there were people in the world who weren't only thinking this themselves, which is problematic enough, but were encouraging and almost, I don't like the use of this word in general because I think it's wrongly used most of the time, but almost like pushing me and bullying me to say that this had to be taken down. You can't say something nice about a person that we disagree with. What? Is this really what we've come to in our world, where this is happening? That we say someone we disagree with, we can't find the redeeming characteristics within them? Now, some of you might say, hold on, Rabbi. They're just talking about the political world, and the political world is a-changing, and because it's changing, we've got to adapt to some of its changes, but it's not that case in the rest of the world. And I will tell you, A, wrong. B, it will change everywhere if you allow it to happen there. What if you have a dear friend who's Orthodox? They're an Orthodox Jew. And they're in synagogue on any given day with another one of their Orthodox Jew friends. And they happen to say, and I'm just using myself as an example, it could be anyone else. They happen to say, I met Rabbi Kirshner, the rabbi of the conservative temple. And we were at the grocery store together. He was buying some things, and he was really nice. I was in a rush. He let me go in front of him in the line and wished me a Shabbat Shalom. What a nice man to do that. And imagine that the other Orthodox person says, you can't call him a nice man. He's conservative. He's eroding every single piece of fabric that is our Jewish tradition. Assimilation, intermarriage, liberalness is all invading the Jewish people, and it's because of people like him. Don't dare you say he's a good man. Now, some of you might actually say, that's absurd. No one could ever talk like that. But they do. They do all the time. They do in Israel. They do in ultra-Orthodox places. They don't in modern Orthodox places most of the time. But this idea that we're going to paint people a particular way for beliefs that they hold, and that's ultimately what it is. It's a belief that they hold. It's not a political agenda. It's not a religious agenda. It's a belief that they're passionate about. That tells us we must keep them what I call the Heisman. We must keep them away from us, not near us, lest they pervade our world and taint us to what it is that they believe. Now, do you think that because I had a charming 5 minutes with the Speaker of the House, that changed my beliefs on gun control? Do you think that because I had a whopping 5 minutes with the Speaker of the House that I now think a woman doesn't have a right to choose what she does with her body? Of course not. That is silly. But to not be able to see the humanity in a person is a problem. I had a similar incident happen before this whole prayer moment for me. And ironically, it happened with the Speaker of the House as well. You see, the Speaker of the House has an office in the Capitol, along with other leaders of the majority and minority parties. And one of the leaders who has an office right next door to the Speaker of the House is Steve Scalise. Steve Scalise is the congressman who was preparing for the baseball game that they played to raise for charity and was shot by a gunman and almost died. And Steve Scalise was able, after rehab and incredible and crazy amounts of work by doctors and first responders, to come back to the Capitol. And he came back to work, and for whatever reason, the Speaker didn't know that Congressman Scalise was returning to work. And as a surprise, the congressman was brought into his office, and the Speaker saw him, and Speaker Ryan fell to his knees and started crying. Because the Speaker happens to be a very devout Catholic, and he happens to be a very spiritual, religious person. And I think, and I'm just projecting here, that the Speaker realized that what happened to Steve Scalise could happen to any of us in the world, Republican or Democrat, and he was so thankful to God that he was able to come back to work. And the Speaker fell to his knees, and he started hugging the congressman and crying very hard. And it was a gorgeous, beautiful moment about friendship and about two people who had dedicated their life to helping the American people, and it was poignant. And it was captured on film, so I shared it with my social media orbit. And I got the same response that we had with the Speaker. How dare you share this? How dare we celebrate these people? These are the people who enabled these gun controls to happen in the first place, or the lack of gun controls, and on and on and on. And not everyone, but not a one of these people who were so harsh and mean and focused and critical were able to see the humanity in that moment. I'm going to tell you one more story that might be the most troubling of them all to me. It's the story of a woman named Haley Geffman Gold, who was a very high-level attorney who worked at CBS. And the day after the atrocious murder of 58 people in Las Vegas by a deranged gunman in the Mandalay Bay Hotel, she proclaimed, as an attorney for CBS, that she was unable to find any sympathy for the victims because they were attending a country music concert, and most country music supporters were Republicans, and they were people who were opposed to gun control in the first place. So to paraphrase what she was saying, she said they had it coming to them. They had it coming to them. Now this got me sick to my stomach. And CBS did the right thing instantly, and they terminated her from her job, as she deserved to be. How could anyone have it coming to them because they like a particular genre of music, or because they're of a particular political stripe, or because they live in a particular state of this country? Why would that license anyone to put a target on their back when they're enjoying the liberties and freedoms that this country offers? Even if I can engage passionately in debate with them about some of those liberties and freedoms and our views, why are we unable so often now to see the humanity one in the next? Bret Stephens wrote a brilliant article that I encourage all of you to read in its entirety called The Dying Art of Disagreement. And in order to really give justice to parts of the article, I'm not going to paraphrase it. I want to read exactly what Bret writes because it would do an injustice to share just parts with you. Stephens says, "This has become the depressing trend on American university campuses and throughout our places of debate, where the roster of disinvited speakers and forced cancellations include people on the right and people on the left. It includes former Secretaries of State Henry Kissinger and Condoleezza Rice, former Harvard University President Larry Summers, actor Alec Baldwin, human rights activist Ayaan Hirsi Ali, DNA co-discoverer James Watson, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, filmmaker Michael Moore, conservative Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist George Will, and liberal Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Anna Quinlan, and this is just to name a few. To say the words, "I agree," whether it's agreeing to join an organization or submit to a political authority or subscribe to a religious faith, may be the basis of every community. But to say, "I disagree," to say, "I refuse," to say, "you are wrong," these are the words that define our individuality. They give us freedom to enjoin our tolerance, enlarge our perspectives, to seize our attention, to energize our progress, to make our democracies real, to give hope and courage to oppressed people everywhere. Whether it was Galileo and Darwin, Mandela and Havel, Rosa Parks and Natan Sharansky, such are the ranks of people who have disagreed. And the problem I see it, Bret Stephens concludes, is that we are failing at the task of being able to disagree, but to do so with a sense of respect for the humanity, one with the other. It's true that we disagree about a lot of things. In this synagogue, we disagree about whether women should be included or not included, although we have a stance that we follow. We disagree as to whether we should shorten the Torah reading or elongate the Torah reading, whether we should lop off one day of the holiday because we now have a state of Israel or keep two. There are all types of disagreements that we have in our shul. But it doesn't mean that when I disagree with someone who holds a view different than mine, or when you disagree with that person who holds a view different than yours, that you can cease to see the humanity within them. That when they have a simcha, we don't say, "I'm not going to celebrate with them. I'm not going to throw candy and not dance at their wedding." And when they have a loss, we're not going to say, "I won't go to that shiva. They had it coming to them." How dare we? That is antithetical to everything we stand for in Judaism and in America. And that's the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, that Jews have thrived in this country for as long as we have, because our values and foundations are the same. They are the same because they are based on tolerance and understanding and appreciation and multiplicity of voices that makes for the chorus that is this country, and that is the exact same definition that can be given to what it is to be a Jew. And when we say, "You don't agree with me, your voice doesn't count here, you can't have the right to say that, and because of that I will cease to see you as the human in which you are," we have failed as Americans, and we have failed as Jews in God's eye. Abraham this week does the most heroic thing so far in the Bible. And that is, he advocates for the other. There is this town that is riddled with misfits and bad behavior. And the town is called Sodom v'Amorah, this area where people are behaving inappropriately in every way you can imagine. Sexually, morally, they are behaving wrong. And God says, "I'm going to destroy that town." God learned after the flood, "I'm not going to destroy everything. I'm just going to destroy that town. I'm going to be laser focused." And what does Abraham say? Abraham says, "God, don't destroy that town." And then he bargains with God. And he's not afraid to go toe-to-toe with God and to say, "God, there are righteous people there. There might be people we disagree with politically or religiously. There might be people who believe in multiple idols or multiple gods. But we shouldn't take their lives because we disagree with them. If they're behaving immorally, that's one thing. But if they're righteous people there, people who have views that we disagree with but still hold on to a moral belief and a faith, then they deserve the right to live." And Abraham was willing to fight that fight and to see the other as someone who mattered. And that matters. It was Abraham telling all of us that tolerance, that having a wide embrace, that appreciation for other voices matters. It doesn't mean we have to accept that view. It doesn't mean that we should stop fighting vociferously and passionately for views that we believe in. And if someone who advocates for no gun control and no gun measures in this arena of the synagogue or in the public square, I'll be one of the first to raise my hand and say, you're wrong, and I passionately disagree with you. And here are the facts, the way in which I see them. And this is why I think this is best for our world and for our country and for the safety of every human. And I will not be tempered in my voice, and I will not be tempered in my passion, but I will not degrade the human who is making that argument, as long as they're not degrading me. Meaning, if they want to make the argument that they want to, God bless them, and we can disagree, that is fine. But to paint us in colors on who we are as people is where we cross the line of no return. And then we become a place where we cast everyone out and refuse to see the righteous amongst us. I close this sermon the way that I begin this sermon. I am a Democrat. I am passionate and fierce in thinking and believing that we need serious changes in our gun legislation in America, and I believe every woman has a right to choose what she wants to do with her body. These are just some of the many, many thoughts I have. But when someone disagrees with me on that, whether it's you sitting in the third row, whether it's someone at the pickup line at my kid's school, whether it's the Speaker of the House of the United States of America, that does not negate the humanity that they have within them. In fact, it's because of these differing views and the beauty of debate that has brought the blossoming of the harmony and beautiful flowers that is this great experiment called the United States, and is the very beauty of what is our religion. A religion of Shammai and Hillel, a religion of Sephardic and Ashkenazic, a religion of Reform and Orthodox. These are the panoply of our peoples. If we cease to see the humanity in another, we have ceased to live like Abraham and in God's image. And that could lead to the greatest destruction of all. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We continue our service, page 184. The Chazan leads us in the Chatzi Kaddish. Please rise.